Hi, my name is Pasha Ink and I work in a style called glitch realism. Today I'm working on an image of a poisoned dart frog. As usual, I start by working on the areas with black color, beginning with the sections closest to me. I typically work from bottom to top, focus on the darkest areas first. I also apply light tones and white color during the work, without worrying that they might get smudged later. When I work with skin, I'm careful not to overwork it, ensuring it remains as undamaged as possible. The work is very interesting and highly detailed. Mostly as usual, I use a 5RS needle. In some areas, I work on details with a 5RL needle for higher precision. Now I'm finishing these circles and patterns on the frog and continuing to work on other details, which are also done with black ink. The very first step in my work is to refine the dark elements and the most critical parts. When I focus on these key areas, I try to be as careful as possible and not rush because I need very high precision and clarity in these sections. If you hurry and are not confident with the most vital aspects of the tattoo, the final result will simply not look its best. So please pay special attention to these segments. During my work, for instance, if I'm using black ink and currently working on an eye, I automatically look ahead and plan where else I need to use that color or any other shade I'm working with to speed up the process. This has become second nature to me and I do it without even realizing it. Now I'm adding depth to the eye by filling it with a dark gray tone, which is lighter than black. This gray tone reads as a separate shade and creates a reflex effect that enhances the overall volume and realism. Right now I'm creating a transition with a medium tone on the eye to make a highlight. This transition is very subtle and will look almost unnoticeable, but it will make the highlight appear very realistic. I'm using a 5RS needle to fill everything in. The needle is very small and precise, and it performs its task exceptionally well. Here I am also applying a medium tone to the eye. It's not a highlight, but rather a reflex that is slightly lighter than the initial dark tone I applied to the eye. Since the tattoo is located on this part of the leg, it's quite convenient to work with this area of the skin because it's properly stretched and I don't need to apply extra effort to stretch it further. Now I've started working with blue ink. I begin with the blue color because it's the darkest and then I proceed to the green color. Try to maintain the order of colors from dark to light to minimize any potential color contamination in the tattoo. Even if you work efficiently and get the ink into the skin on the first pass, it's still advisable to follow this order for the colors to appear cleaner and more vibrant, although it's not absolutely mandatory. The use of this entire palette of glitch colors creates a very intriguing visual effect. When I apply the inks, they don't have smooth transitions from one color to another, but instead have sharp edges between colors. This sharp transition and contrast between colors add an extra layer of contrast. Since the colors are very opposite to each other, they create a vibration effect, which results in a very interesting visual experience for the viewer. This is precisely why these tattoos are perceived with such interest. Now I'm adding yellow ink to certain areas, balancing the entire palette and achieving the final result. I always use yellow ink last because it's the lightest of the colors. By following this order, I achieve the cleanest possible colors in the final result. While watching this video, pay attention to even the slightest movements and my approach to tattooing. Compare it with your own approach to notice any important nuances you might be missing or doing incorrectly. Currently, while working on the frog's back, I'm slightly changing my technique. Here, I need to work on the texture in a more detailed manner. I am shading the edges with a darker tone to add more expressiveness and contrast to the edge of the back, applying global shading to create a more three-dimensional effect. For this, I'm using muted shades of blue and purple, premixing them with a dark gray color. This gives me a desaturated color that acts as a darkener for my primary colors. The most important thing when applying shadows on already worked on skin is to be very careful. Since the skin is already damaged, it's easy to over-traumatize it. Therefore, if you are going over an area that has already been worked on, you must do it gently and avoid overloading the skin in those spots. I'm currently refining the area around the frog's head, creating smoother transitions and gradients from one color to another. I'm also adding purple, which I sometimes use to achieve a more interesting neon effect. Previously, my palette didn't include purple, but now I use it very often. I can say it's now a permanent part of my palette. I'm finishing working with the yellow color before starting to do highlights with white ink. I create a neat shape, making the necessary transitions before applying white. I always work on details in high quality to ensure that any shading transitions smoothly into another color, so that the gradient looks beautiful when the colors blend. At this stage, I'm working on the final touches with dots, adding white color and incorporating it into areas where there is still untouched skin. I decided to smooth out the gradients a bit around the frog's head. I'm working on this with orange color and adding a small gradient with magenta. Now I'm starting to apply the highlight near the eye, using an 11 curved mag medium tape needle. I'm also finishing up the highlights around the frog's mouth. I'm adding a few highlights on the back where I've already worked to give more volume to this area. The tattoo is done, follow me to see more breakdowns.